It started the summer of 1990. Arguably, the greatest rival in the state of Ohio, if not the country, put their differences aside and merged into one team. Prior, we witnessed products of Warren excite a community, win championships, witness players from Warren, Western Reserve Raiders, and the Warren G. Harding Panthers reach their ultimate goal of playing professional football, and even witness the start of one man go on to become immortal in Canton. The greatest rival, some 30 years ago, became one team. 30 years, a merger of two high schools became one, the Warren G. Harding Raiders. 30 years ago, a combined team was given the opportunity to set the standard of what a Warren G. Harding Raider would be. And 30 years ago, a team was given a chance to let the state and the world know that prior championship mentality, prior earning your right to represent your team name and colors, prior giving 110% effort and becoming the best you, was just the beginning of football athletics in Warren. But this show is not about the respect of those two teams prior to 1990. This show isn't just about the 1990 state championship. Warren, Ohio, it's been 30 long years of continued football student athletes excellence. 30 years ago, Chapter 1 stopped, but Chapter 2 since then has been nothing short of electric. On this show, we look back at the top 30 in the past 30 years Warren G. Harding Raider football players that have created lasting impressions to our community that will last a lifetime. We count down the top 30 Raiders that in front of us gave all their sweat, tears, and blood, laid it all on the line to become the greatest them. In this countdown, don't be surprised to see a Warren G. Harding Raider that with one catch had 42,000 people in Warren standing on their feet with goosebumps running up and down their body. On this countdown, you might just see a Raider win a championship for our city, go on to become great, but more importantly, become a father and give them the keys to create their own legacy. On this countdown, you might just see a Raider willing to play whatever position, do whatever it takes to not only make him great, but those around him, and eventually be drafted in the NFL. On this countdown, a Raider that not only did unbelievable things in the running game on the high school level, but did the same in college to win a national championship. On this countdown, it's not just about the Raiders that made the big catch or the big run or the big throw, but the ones that line up to make any of those plays become reality. And on this show, you might just see the likes of a Raider that you don't even call him by his first and last name. You refer to him by the impact he gave on the field, B-O-O-M, boom. On this countdown, a Raider so great and inspiring that on Friday nights, his number 77 are in the clouds forever looking down at Mollenkoff Stadium. And you can't just pick anyone to create this top 30 list. You have to search for a person that never misses a game. Search for arguably the Warren G. Harding Raiders' #1 fan. Search for a Raider that knows his statistics and knows his history and has earned the respect of creating other countdowns. And there's no other man than David Warren Baugh as countdown analyst. But these past 30 years, you just don't create a show based off of one man's top 30, but you get an inside look and get commentary from special guests. Like a man every Friday night during high school football season that takes over 30 minutes on air, going over every game played in the Valley, all under one breath. Sports director from WKBN, Ryan Allison. A man you hear on Game of the Week countless times in excitement saying, "Touchdown, Warren Harding!" Executive producer of Game of the Week from WKBN, Chad Krasinski. A guy that's been around for a very long time, and before becoming the sports director of the news station, was a radio analyst that commentated the last Warren Harding versus Warren Western Reserve game. Sports director from WFMJ, Dana Balish. We also have special guest appearances from high school principal Dante Capers and our head coach Steve Arnold. In Warren, Ohio, it's been a long time since we've heard from this coach. A coach that spent 7 years creating 2 AP championship teams. A special look at his era in football in Warren, Ohio. most known for 3 letters, capital M, lowercase c, capital D, Tom McDaniels. But when it's all said and done and all the smoke is cleared, this show is dedicated to the Warren G. Harding Raiders spring sports class of 2020, where a virus may take away their final year, but they will be remembered forever. This is a fan-made, non-profit top 30 countdown show with its primary purpose to bring fun entertainment to our area during COVID-19 by counting down great athletes and memories from Warren, Ohio's public schools football team, the Warren G. Harding Raiders. So, the views, information, or opinions expressed during this series are solely those of the individuals involved and do not represent those of Warren City Schools, current staff, players, or coaches of the Warren G. Harding Raider football team, related nonprofit programs, or the companies that employ the individuals interviewed. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the top 30 Warren G. Harding Raider football players in the past 30 years. So without further ado, please welcome our host, 2003 Warren G. Harding graduate Brandon Giovannone, and 2002 Warren G. Harding graduate, your number one source of Raider statistics and history, countdown analyst, David Baugh. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the top 30 Warren G. Harding Raider football players in the past 30 years. I'm your host, Brandon Giovannone, and with me is a man that needs no introduction if you've ever been to a Warren Harding game. Our countdown analyst. I'm going to give him an introduction anyways. It's the guy that says, "Let's go Raiders." Ladies and gentlemen, our countdown analyst, David Baugh. David, how you doing?
I'm great. How are you doing? You staying safe?
Oh, I'm trying to. Just enjoying being bored, I guess. That's about the best way I can put it. How are you doing? Everyone safe over there?
Yeah, just trying to relax, but take care of business, you know?
Oh, absolutely. Well, you know, I called you up and I said, hey, you know, we got some time on our hands right now because of this, you know, COVID. And I'm like, let's put together this list. And as we said, folks, this show is dedicated to the Warren G. Harding Raiders sports spring class of 2020. Without further ado, Dave, Worm, how hard was it to put this list together?
Oh, man, it was tough. I mean, you had 30 different people. You're going to get 30 different answers. We've been so spoiled and blessed around here with an immense amount of talent and just the memories that our community has been blessed to have. So it was very fun.
Oh, absolutely. Well, let's get started. So, Worm, number 30.
Oh my God, I left so many guys out. I know they're going to be so upset with me. But my number 30, he was a senior when I was a freshman, Terrence Dawson. A lot of times we forget about, you know, guys like Lynn Bowden and Maurice Claret, who we're going to hear about later, of course. You know, we hear about those guys making the paper and, you know, but a lot of times we forget about the linemen that do it in the trenches, especially on the defensive end of the ball. So Terrence Dawson, we called him Big Duke. He was a big, agile, two-sport athlete. He excelled in basketball. He was a monster defensive tackle. He ended up earning a football scholarship to Indiana. And we're going to hear from several other players from the class of 99. Like, it was just so loaded. It just carried the way they carried themselves in school. They were like monsters. This is back in 1998, you know, because he graduated in 99. So just Big Duke. You'll see the highlights, but he was just an amazing off the edge. And then, you know, sometimes he would line up in nose tackle and he would just stuff the middle. I mean, he was amazing. Big Duke, Terrence Dawson.
Worm, who do we have for number 29?
Love his family to death. Vanessa Provitt, class of 1995. He ended up at Ohio State and he spent some time with the Pittsburgh Steelers in the preseason of 2001. But he's just such a great size and speed. Harding wasn't very known for passing the ball back then because the quarterbacks were more mobile and agile than throwing. But I mean, 7 career touchdown catches, 3 returns, 1 via kickoff, was 88 yards, and the longest kickoff returns in Harding history. And punt return touchdowns at 49 and 35 yards. I mean, he was so big, and you'll see in the highlights the way that he just pulls away from people in in the open field was just amazing. Like I say, he comes from a great family. I believe he's a sheriff in Columbus now. So once again, it's great to see that the values that these guys have, whether they're young men, and once the football chapter of their life stops, they continue to use the same values and morals that made them great players, and it turns them into hard-working adults. So shout out to my boy.
Who is Worm's number 28?
Number 28 is another guy, went to school with him, he's a couple years older than me, John Lumpkin. He's one that kind of gets forgotten about. He's the other DN that was opposite of Big Duke. But he was a 3-year starter, but it's funny, he made his name, he really blew up as a junior. First game in 1998, Harding played Cincinnati Moeller. They were the reigning state runner-up, and Harding started the season 17th in the country. And Moeller featured a guy by the name of Michael Munoz. It might sound familiar because his father, Anthony Munoz, I believe he's in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, the Cincinnati Bengal. Munoz was a 3-time All-Ohio selection in Division I, and he eventually became an All-American for the University of Tennessee, but Lump just dominated him, and like I said, Lump was a junior. I believe they were both juniors that year, but Lump just really gave Harding that push to establish themselves as one of the premier teams in Ohio. So John Lumpkin, he played, had a football scholarship at the University of Indiana, and he's doing very well now. I hear from him from time to time, so shout out to my boy Lump.
All right, Worm, 3 down. What is number 27?
Number 27 is the guy that could really, really be higher on the list. Chris Ensign, the original starting quarterback from the 1990 state championship team.
And I remember Chris, the right-handed quarterback, was just like a rifle. Threw I think 22 touchdowns that year, and it was a good year for Warren Harding. But
Ensign, he came over from reserve to play his senior year at Harding from after the consolidation. 5'10", 171 pounds, but what he lacked in size, he made up for it with heart. And I highlight you'll see him taking a regular quarterback sneak and staying up and run through the pile for a 35-yard touchdown. He threw for 1,298 yards, 17 touchdowns, and 11 of those touchdowns went for at least 30 yards. Annarella did such a great job of, Coach Annarella, God bless his soul, he did such a great job of taking all these players and taking two sides of towns and managing egos and coming together. And Ensign was such a huge part of that. So Chris Ensign, number 27.
Oh, absolutely. And, that's what kind of brought this together. For those that don't know out there, is the merger happened 30 years ago, 1990. Warren Western Reserve Raiders and the Warren G. Harding Panthers became the Warren G. Harding Raiders. And, this was the team, Worm, that, they got to create what it means to be the new Warren G. Harding Raiders. They had 2 paths. One path, we can't get along. We're still fighting. We're still doing this. We're no longer a championship city. Or nothing's changed. We are only one school now, but it means even more now because the whole city is one team doing great things. And obviously they won that championship, Worm, and here we are now. We get to announce 30 additional players, or 30 players from that era, from the past 30 years. And, that's a great pick, number 27.
Yeah, Ensign, another thing I should add, and I'm going to get in touch, and I'm going to touch on this later, but he still holds the record for the longest touchdown pass in Division I history.
All right, Worm, number 26 on the top 30 Warren G. Harding Raider football players in the past 30 years. Number 26.
Number 26, another senior from my freshman year, 1999 grad, James Homer Simpson. He was a defensive tackle. He was just so big and so agile. He played in he was one of 3 Harding grads from 99 to play in the 1999 Big 33 game. Him, and we'll hear more from Derek Toles and Carl Diggs, but he started defensive tackle. He was just amazing. And like Lump in the Moeller game, he really helped set the tone up front for between him, that entire defense line, him, Big Duke, and Lump. They used to eat guys up. He had a football scholarship at Temple, James Homer Simpson.
Worm, 5 down, 25 to go. Who is number 25?
Once again, these guys can be so much higher, but you can't talk about Harding football and not mention Lavelle Richardson. Going back to the mid-90s, once again, quarterbacks were always good and skilled at Harding, but, more emphasis was placed on the run more often than not with our quarterbacks, with the quarterback keeper. But Lavelle Richardson, 9 career touchdown catches. He also returned a kickoff at Erie Central, 75 yards for a touchdown. Ended up playing at Michigan State in college, where ironically he had a couple games against Vaness, previously mentioned, number 30, one of his old teammates. Lavelle was a great guy, doing very good, beautiful family, still settled in Michigan. He's always been my guy, and guys like him that, we grew up watching, they're part of the fabric of what motivated our era to want to play the game. So shout out to Lavelle, 1996 Warren G. Harding graduate.
All right, Worm, who do we have for number 24?
Number 24 might surprise some people, but I'll explain my reasoning. But Alvin Jennings, class of 2000. Alvin was a 2-year starter, but this is his sophomore and junior year. He missed his entire senior year. He caught 8 touchdown passes. 4 of those were over 30 yards. He's the only player in Harding history with 2 punt return touchdowns longer than 70 yards. There were 74 and 88 yards.
Right.
Alvin was so gifted on loaded teams. I really believe that his presence could have opened up the entire field, not just for Claret, but, for the young guys my age and, for the rest of that 2000 senior class. He was very highly underappreciated, but Alvin Jennings ended up earning a scholarship to the University of Buffalo. He has a nephew right now, Damari Freeman, that was a sophomore for the team this year, so shout out to him. Has a lot of potential, but Alvin Jennings, number 24.
Number 23, who do we have?
This guy almost represents the first family of modern-day Warren G. Harding football, the first of 3 from the Daniels family. And this one is LaShawn Daniels Jr., class of 2013. He came over as a junior, played his junior and senior year here. His father, LaShawn Sr., was a key member of that 1990 football team.
LaShawn Daniels, boy, following in the tradition of all those great Harding players in his family as well. He continued on following in those footsteps.
LaShawn Jr., he was just a workhorse. 2012 first team All-Ohio. He finished that season with 1,570 yards and 15 touchdowns. He's 7th all time, going back to beyond the consolidation, with 2,478 yards, scored 22 touchdowns, played college football at Iowa, spent 2 years in the NFL. That door might not be all the way closed just yet, but even if it is, he's such a great young man. The qualities that these men show just on the football field has made them such great people. He's such a well-raised young man, very nice.
Not enough you can say about
football is the Daniels family,
Oh, absolutely it is. And no, he was a treat to watch. We have a gift in Northeastern Ohio when it comes to superstars, and especially with Warren Harding. So that's a great pick at number 23. All right, great list so far, Worm. Who do we have at number 22?
Number 22, we're honoring this whole project honors guys from the past, but right now we're going to take a look into the present, because right now we have a very dynamic young man. Our quarterback, Elijah Taylor, we have hopefully one more year with him. The football season comes around, but he came into this year with a lot of promise. He opened up the season on the road, 341 yards, Harding record, 3 touchdowns at Cam McKinley. Comes back a few weeks later on the road, breaks his own record, 366 yards passing, again at Accuracy within St. Mary. He's 2nd all time with 27 touchdown passes. He's 1 behind Lynn Bowden, who of course we're going to hear about later on. All-time leading passer in Harding history with 3,124 yards. with a year left. 15 touchdown passes. 15 of his 27 career touchdown passes have gone for at least 30 yards. With our emphasis on the run over the years, we don't have a whole lot of quarterbacks that even threw 15 touchdowns, period, let alone for over 30 yards. So he's finding guys out there. He's an MVP both on and off the field, dynamic student. I'm looking forward to seeing how his recruiting picks up over the next year or so. Great family. Elijah Taylor, great kid. Looking forward to seeing more of him.
Oh, absolutely. And you spoke about Lynn Bowden. I remember I had a conversation with you after Lynn's final year, and I said, who's going to come in at quarterback? Those are some big shoes to fill. And you told me, well, we're going to be okay at quarterback. Football's evolving into more of a passing game. We've always been known on a high school level as, stop the big plays and run it down your throat. And I think one of the biggest things is I think he's doing a phenomenal job of creating what this next level of Warren G. Harding Raider quarterback is. All right, we are on number 21, Worm. Who do you have listed for number 21?
Number 21, we're going to go back a couple years for Kimari Murray, tailback, 2016 graduate, 3,159 yards in his career. One of, I believe, 5 former players that rushed for over 3,000 yards. He almost became the first player in Harding history to run for 1,000 yards in all 3 of his years, but he fell just short of that. But 32 touchdowns, 14 career 100-yard games, 3 games of over 200 yards, 7 career touchdown runs of 55 yards or more. He was such a dynamic player. He's not the biggest guy on the field. We was able to see him in the same backfield with Lynn Bowden in 2015. Just was a great kid. I've known his mother for years, so it's great to see, when I really don't watch him grow up, but when you see somebody that and their son grows up and has a pretty successful high school football career, that's very satisfying.
Oh, absolutely.
Him produce on the field. So Kimari Murray.
All right, and to end the 20s, Worm, who do you have at number 20?
Number 20, we're both going to like this selection. Graduated with you, one of the most versatile players in Harding history, Mike Phillips, class of 2003. He completed 51% of his passes for 2,079 yards and 19 touchdowns in his career. It's tied for that 19 is tied for 4th all time with touchdown passes. But in addition to that, he was a first team All-Ohio quarterback selection in 2002. And he had 4 interceptions, which is a lot, but Mike was always given the assignment of guarding the toughest receiver on the opposing team. I believe we can all remember Tony Gonzalez from Cleveland's St. Ignatius.
Right.
Mike is all over the place. He went to Pitt. His injuries at Pitt late in his career probably costed him an NFL career, but I'm pretty sure that had an effect on him. But nevertheless, Mike is a great guy. Once again, I've really stressed the football qualities, the qualities that make them great on the field, making them great off the field. Mike is a trainer. He's our strength coach at Warren G. Harding. Mike is just great guy, great family, great football player, but even better person. So Mike Phillips.
Oh, absolutely. And I can't agree with you anymore there. And if you can't get a smile around that guy or just walk away feeling good.
Yeah, something's wrong with Mike.
Absolutely.
So, Mike, how does it feel to be listed on Worm's top 30 football players from Warren in the past 30 years?
Oh, man, I'm thankful and appreciative.
Absolutely.
I'm very thankful because someone like Warren, who very been around, one of the big Harding fans, a journalist here. Seen a lot of ball. We're very rich in tradition.
Right.
So for my name to be on that list is tremendous.
Absolutely.
Appreciative because there's a lot of sacrifices that was made from my family to great coaching, great players, names household names or may not know, but sacrifices played a vital part. And also the fans, man, it was very electrifying playing in that stadium.
All right, Raider fans, with us now is a two-time AP champion football head coach for the Warren G. Harding Raiders. Ladies and gentlemen, Tom McDaniels. Tom, Coach McD, how you been?
I've been great. Miss coaching every day, but I'm keeping myself involved in football by, chasing the Michigan Wolverines around and chasing the New England Patriots around. But I'm doing well. The whole family's doing great.
You know, what's crazy is probably as when your sons were younger, you kept them overly activated in football with everything that you were doing. Now you get to sit back and see what marvelous things they're doing college level and in the NFL.
Yeah, it's a complete role reversal. They got to come to practices at McKinley when they were about 4 or 5 years old, as long as they could behave and not get in the way. And so now I'm the guy that gets to go to practices as long as I behave and I don't get in the way. And so I learned from them about how to do that pretty well.
That's awesome. Well, I appreciate you being on the show today. In a nutshell, Coach McD, in a nutshell, what did those years as our head coach of the Warren G. Harding Raiders, what did those mean to you?
Well, I'd been out of coaching for 2 years after we won that championship at McKinley in '97, and I missed it. About 6 months into that administrative position that I accepted, I knew that I'd made a mistake. And so I anxiously attempted to get back into coaching somehow, somewhere. And at the time that Warren Harding hired me in 2000, I said that they gave me my life back because I was not an administrator. I was a football coach. So it was a great opportunity, and they gave me that opportunity to get back into coaching. Those 7 years in Warren were among the best 7 years of my life. I love the kids. The community was extremely supportive. We got things going and won some games and competition and filled the stadiums and got deep into the playoffs. But it was a wonderful 7 years. Like I said, among the best 7 years of my whole life.
And it was a tremendous 7 years for the Warren community. To witness some of those star athletes that came out there, some of those big games that just, and I think what's forgotten a little bit here is I think maybe football has became evenly across a bunch of teams. But when you were in Division I back in those times, these were players that you paid $6 to go to a game, and more than likely you saw a couple NFL stars. I mean, not just the playoff games, maybe even week 8 you were facing against these people. So those were just great years of football. Well, for the fans out there, I originally reached out to Coach McD and say, just give me your top 10 players that of Harding. And then he just inside here, he couldn't do it. There was no way he could narrow it down, right?
No.
So then we decided 30 of what you coached, and you still couldn't do it, right?
No. There's no way that I could, reduce that number to 10 because invariably I was going to slight somebody. And the last thing I want to do is to slight a kid that played for me at Warren Harding because, one of the other things that made those 7 years among the best of my life is how committed they were to the program that I presented, in the way that I wanted to manage the program. Warren kids could always run like crazy and they'd hit anything that moved. And I had coached against them, obviously, so I knew that. I figured out pretty quickly that all they needed was some structure and some direction and discipline. And then we'll let those guys that run like crazy and hit like crazy, you can win a lot of football games. And then when you've got really talented players like we did, it all worked out for all of us.
So without further ado, after I spoke with you, we decided, you know what? It's been a long time since we've reached, we've heard from you around here. We do miss you dearly. And I think it's actually better that we're going to do Coach McDaniels just top, what would you say, 35? We have 35 now?
34 kids that I have listed.
34. And what was hard with you is I know you said all of your kids were special to you. And even the ones that may not have been superstars that were friends of mine, they still say what they taught, what they've learned from you, or I'll hear they called you the other day or something like that. And over the past, 15 years, and it's
I touched a lot of them.
Yeah. And it's amazing. So I'm going to give you the floor. So without further ado, Coach Tom McDaniels, top 34 players that he's coached with Warren Harding.
Well, and the other thing that I think that we need to mention here before I get started is that we weren't in the business of making people superstars.
Right.
We had superstar players, but that was media driven. That was not something that I was in the business of doing. We were very much a team oriented. That was the approach that we took. And so those really gifted players that we had, they bought into that team concept too. But we knew that if we won a lot of games, everybody could benefit. And if some guy ended up being Mr. Football, that's really only an honor, maybe one guy can cherish.
Right.
But kids bought into that. And without any further delay here, I'll begin to mention some of those names. I grouped some of them by position.
Okay.
Knowing that we played a lot of kids on both sides of the ball. So some of these kids may be mentioned as an offensive position, knowing that they played on the other side of the ball too. But the first group happened to be running backs that I listed. Okay. And that list begins with Maurice Clarett, Danny Herron, Richard Davis, David Herron, who was a fullback and a linebacker. But we were in a two-back offense a lot. And you needed a great fullback to put in front of an effective running back in Delbert Ferguson. But those guys offered a variety of things, from the running back position. And again, there are probably some other position players here who maybe mentioned on the defensive side of the ball that could have belonged in that group. But those were the running back guys. Okay. The quarterback group, it began with Mikey Phillips, who was my first starting quarterback as a sophomore. Started for 3 years there. Obviously was a defensive starter too, and ended up going to Pitt as a corner. But Mike Phillips is on that list. Mike Kokel, who shared time with Mike, for the last 2 years and was an All-Ohio punter. He's on that list. Alex Engram, who was here for 1 year. He's a Warren kid who moved back to Ohio, for his senior year. He's the only quarterback I've ever coached to win a complete season without throwing an interception.
Wow. Okay.
That's basically unheard of in my life. And Roger Matlock, who was a two-way starter. He was an undersized guy, and he played every play, as a DB, as a safety, and every play as a quarterback. That would have been his senior season when Mario was a senior and so on. But he was a two-way guy, but he belongs in that list. Mario's most effective year, actually, in terms of catches and yards and touchdowns and so on, was Roger's senior year.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so he very much deserves to be on that list. The wide receiver group is a smaller group because a lot of these guys, did participate in it and played on the other side of the ball. That list begins with Mario Manningham, Chris Rucker, and in the early years, Tremaine Warfield. Very popular Warren name, but those guys were remarkable and belong on that short list of receivers. Again, there'll be other guys mentioned in the other groups. I'm going to jump to the other side of the ball. I'm going to do the linemen last because they're probably the least remembered because you can't measure them by numbers and statistics, and yet they're necessary. But I'm going to save them for last. The best I'm going to save for last. The linebackers, Demetrius McCreadis, that state runner-up year. Stefan Alexander, also from that year. Ben Elzer. And James Johnson, we used to call him J-Rock, but they were on that state runner-up team in 2002. The DVs, and there's a large group of these guys, right? And deservingly so. It is a large group. Sidney Glover, Prescott Burgess, Joe Finnessy, the best smile any football player I ever had. Antoine Molden, Robbie Masucci, and Danny Stella. And Danny Stella was like a Swiss Army knife. He made contributions as a receiver and contributions as a DB, and he was a very smart player. But he was a Swiss Army knife kind of guy who played multiple positions and multiple roles. And now we get down to the O lineman and the D lineman. Some of these guys played on both sides of the ball, so I may list him as an O line guy, and they could have been a D line guy. Right. But the O line guys were Rocco Cerrone, Deontay Campbell, two guys who were 3-year starters. For us, started as sophomores at the 2 tackle positions. Chris Anzavino, Levi George, who's probably the best center that I ever coached, and Byron Wilson, another guy that contributed on more than one side of the ball. And then the D-line guys would be names that people will remember: Anthony Hoke, Philip McNeil, Anthony Harris, Tony Reed, and Corey Tucker. Corey Tucker was also a tight end, and some of those guys, filled that tight end role for us while they were playing other positions. And then the last guy on the list, very necessary and very deserving, is Joe Spain, who was a kicker.
Right.
He did for us at that St. Ed's game in the regional finals. We got the completion from Coco to Mario for a big chunk play, and then he kicked this long field goal as time was running out to send us on to the next level. So those are the guys that are on the list. I actually sought help from some of my assistants because my memory is not what it used to be, and I didn't want to miss anybody. Undoubtedly, I did, but those are guys that I wanted to talk about today.
Oh, absolutely. And that just brought back so many memories as a person that I was basically in, the 4 years I was at Harding, you were our head coach, and our senior year is the year you went to the 2002 championship game. But that was a phenomenal list. I'm glad you brought up a lot of those names because, sometimes some of the players that don't go and become a megastar in college or megastar in the NFL, they made mega memories as a Warren G. Harding Raider. And so what you did with the list right there, I'm glad that a lot of those names were brought up. All right, Worm, it's time for the teens now. Who do you have at number 19?
Number 19 is a guy who needs no introduction off the field. He's Mr. Inspiring Minds himself, 1999 Warren Harding graduate Derek Tolles. He rushed for 1,562 yards and 21 touchdowns in his career. Against Youngstown Rand, he ran for 250 yards and 4 touchdowns, and he actually returned the opening kickoff for a touchdown. He was still selected with 2 of his teammates to play in the Big 33 game where he was actually the MVP of the whole game. At tailback, played football at Penn State where he had a lot of promise and he was riddled by something called rippling muscle disease. Where he went through all that, ended up signing with the Atlanta Falcons, spent time with the Cleveland Browns and Indianapolis Colts. Him and his group of friends, they started Inspiring Minds, where they teach youth to think outside the box and expand their horizons. In life, he's taken them all over the country, all over the world. Actually, because I believe they just got back from Africa not that long ago.
Wow.
So once again, and it's like a thing with me, we're seeing these guys just blossom. The same qualities that make them great football players, strong, disciplined, self-motivated. We're seeing this with Mr. Inspiring Minds himself, Derek Tolles.
All right, Worm, who do you have for number 18?
Number 18, we go back a few more years, one of James Daniels' classmates, Jalen Powell, class of 2013. He was so versatile. He was just like his father, Tom Powell. He scored touchdowns, passing, rushing, receiving, had an interception return, a kickoff return, and a punt return. So there wasn't nothing that this young man couldn't do on the field. So 2012, first team All-Ohio selection at safety. He originally earned a scholarship to Michigan State, where he played for a year or two, but he finished up on a solid note at YSU. And Jalen was just so dynamic when he touched the ball or if you had the ball. All of this starts at home. The way that you raise your kids to be disciplined in the home and working hard at the home, that comes from, so that's why that pattern continues, because of what's instilled with them at home. So shout out to Tico, Andre Coleman, his stepfather. They did such a great job of molding him into the young man and the football player that he was. So Jalen Powell.
All right, Worm, who do you have for number 17?
Number 17 is the first of a few selections that we have from the class of 2007. Shout out to 2007. Y'all know y'all my boys. But Chris Rucker, 2007 graduate, finished his career one of the top Harding receivers statistically of all time, 57 catches for 880 yards and 12 touchdown catches. He hauled in, which is the record for assistant consolidation, but he has 11 interceptions to his credit. Nobody since 1990 has more. And I mean, he just shows up in the clutch. Once again, outstanding young man. He does a lot in the community. He has a little brother on the team right now, but Ruck has taken his football and gone on to do more productive things outside of that as an adult that's just as impactful.
Right.
And like I said, that starts at home. He had a great foundation, looked up to great adult figures in his life, and now he's becoming that same adult figure. So Chris Rucker went to Michigan State, great career, spent a year in the league with the Indianapolis Colts, so he's been all around. And once again, Chris Rucker, shout out to my boy Ruck.
Absolutely. Great list so far, Worm. We are down to number 16. Who is number 16 on your list?
Number 16 can be so much higher. Spent 1 year here, through 19 touchdowns and 1 interception. That's Mr. Alex Ingram. He had probably the strongest arm I've ever seen at Harding. And it's so crazy that I have 15 guys ahead of him, but it's just like 8 of those 19 touchdowns went for over 30 yards. He was throwing to Manningham. He was throwing to Pete Sparks. He was throwing to Jonte Stroud, Joe Fennessy, Richard Davis out the backfield, Delbert Ferguson. That team was so low. They made up the number 2 in the country by the USA Today before they fell to the eventual state runner-up, Lakewood St. Edward. He came from Irving, Texas for his senior year, and he picked up right where Mike Phillips and Mike Coco left off, and he really embraced being a Raider, and he was just such a great leader for that team that was already loaded, but, he carried his own name and
was just one of those guys that, really just took it to heart. I remember talking to Alex one time, and he says, hey, look, it's not about me, it's about the team. I'm in the quarterback spot, but it's the rest of us on that offensive line.
Alex Ingram.
Absolutely.
It started the summer of 1990. Arguably, the greatest rival in the state of Ohio, if not the country, put their differences aside and merged into one team. Prior, we witnessed products of Warren excite a community, win championships, witness players from Warren, Western Reserve Raiders, and the Warren G. Harding Panthers reach their ultimate goal of playing professional football, and even witness the start of one man go on to become immortal in Canton. The greatest rival, some 30 years ago, became one team. 30 years, a merger of two high schools became one, the Warren G. Harding Raiders. 30 years ago, a combined team was given the opportunity to set the standard of what a Warren G. Harding Raider would be. And 30 years ago, a team was given a chance to let the state and the world know that prior championship mentality, prior earning your right to represent your team name and colors, prior giving 110% effort and becoming the best you, was just the beginning of football athletics in Warren. But this show is not about the respect of those two teams prior to 1990. This show isn't just about the 1990 state championship. Warren, Ohio, it's been 30 long years of continued football student athletes excellence. 30 years ago, Chapter 1 stopped, but Chapter 2 since then has been nothing short of electric. On this show, we look back at the top 30 in the past 30 years Warren G. Harding Raider football players that have created lasting impressions to our community that will last a lifetime. We count down the top 30 Raiders that in front of us gave all their sweat, tears, and blood, laid it all on the line to become the greatest them. In this countdown, don't be surprised to see a Warren G. Harding Raider that with one catch had 42,000 people in Warren standing on their feet with goosebumps running up and down their body. On this countdown, you might just see a Raider win a championship for our city, go on to become great, but more importantly, become a father and give them the keys to create their own legacy. On this countdown, you might just see a Raider willing to play whatever position, do whatever it takes to not only make him great, but those around him, and eventually be drafted in the NFL. On this countdown, a Raider that not only did unbelievable things in the running game on the high school level, but did the same in college to win a national championship. On this countdown, it's not just about the Raiders that made the big catch, or the big run, or the big throw, but the ones that line up to make any of those plays become reality. And on this show, you might just see the likes of a Raider that you don't even call him by his first and last name. You refer to him by the impact he gave on the field, B-O-O-M, boom. On this countdown, a Raider so great and inspiring that on Friday nights, his number 77 are in the clouds forever looking down at Mollenkoff Stadium. And you can't just pick anyone to create this top 30 list. You have to search for a person that never misses a game. Search for arguably the Warren G. Harding Raiders' #1 fan. Search for a Raider that knows his statistics and knows his history and has earned the respect of creating other countdowns. And there's no other man than David Warren Baugh as countdown analyst. But these past 30 years, you just don't create a show based off of one man's top 30, but you get an inside look and get commentary from special guests. Like a man every Friday night during high school football season that takes over 30 minutes on air, going over every game played in the Valley, all under one breath. Sports director from WKBN, Ryan Allison. A man you hear on Game of the Week countless times in excitement saying, "Touchdown, Warren Harding." Executive producer of Game of the Week from WKBN, Chad Krasinski. A guy that's been around for a very long time, and before becoming the sports director of the news station, was a radio analyst that commentated the last Warren Harding versus Warren Western Reserve game. Sports director from WFMJ, Dana Balish. We also have special guest appearances from high school principal Dante Capers and our head coach Steve Arnold. In Warren, Ohio, it's been a long time since we've heard from this coach. A coach that spent 7 years creating 2 AP championship teams. A special look at his era in football in Warren, Ohio. Most known for 3 letters, capital M, lowercase c, capital D, Tom McDaniels. But when it's all said and done and all the smoke is cleared, this show is dedicated to the Warren G. Harding Raiders Spring Sports Class of 2020, where a virus may take away their final year, but they will be remembered forever. This is a fan-made, non-profit Top 30 countdown show with its primary purpose to bring fun entertainment to our area during COVID-19 by counting down great athletes and memories from Warren, Ohio's public schools football team, the Warren G. Harding Raiders. So, the views, information, or opinions expressed during this series are solely those of the individuals involved and do not represent those of Warren City Schools, current staff, players, or coaches of the Warren G. Harding Raider football team, related nonprofit programs, or the companies that employ the individuals interviewed. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the top 30 Warren G. Harding Raider football players in the past 30 years. So without further ado, please welcome our host, 2003 Warren G. Harding graduate Brandon Giovannone, and 2002 Warren G. Harding graduate, your number one source of Raider statistics and history, countdown analyst David Baugh.
All right, Worm, we are down to the last 15 here. Who is number 15?
Number 15 is a young man who we still have the pleasure of rooting for as he's early in his college football career at Rutgers, and that will be K-Ron Adams, 2018 Harding graduate.
K-Ron Adams was a two-time member of our Big 22, two-time 1,000-yard rusher, Rutgers commit, just the, absolute combination of strength and speed.
K-Ron Adams now over at Rutgers. K-Ron, again, another one of those players, anytime he got the ball in his hands, able to take it to the house, a very gifted runner, very patient runner. It was a lot of fun to call him taking footballs into the end zone.
K-Ron Adams, a guy, if there was a Mr. Raider, when we talk about character, when we talk about leadership, just sheer grit and determination, I tell you what, K-Ron's one of the first ones that comes to mind with that.
Right. Finished his career with 3,544 yards, which is fourth all-time from 90 back to the 1800s when Harding first started playing. 35 touchdowns, 15 100-yard rushing games, 4 200-yard rushing games, 7 touchdowns of 50 yards or more. I mean, he was just so dynamic. I mean, he 100-meter dash champion in the Austintown district, and he's used that speed that made him good on the track. He's applied it because everybody that's track fast doesn't always be a great football player, but this isn't the case with K-Ron. And he's playing Big Ten football, and the only way from here is up. Great young man, great family, and like I said, I keep stressing family, because all of these accomplishments of these young men belong to everybody that's responsible for looking after these guys and molding them into what they've become. I'm so proud of them. I'm so grateful to these families for sharing their kids with us and allowing us to sit in the stands with them and just watch greatness unfold every week. So K-Ron Adams.
All right, Worm, we are at number 14. Who do you have at 14?
Number 14 might surprise some people, but if you played with him, if you watched him play, you really won't argue. You can argue that he's even higher than what he is, but Levi George, 2006 alum. He started, most of these footnotes are going to be from Boardman, but it's important because his family's from Boardman. He spent his senior year here. But one thing about him, you should remember the 2002 Boardman game that was down there and it was raining like crazy, like a monsoon, and there was wind blowing everywhere. And John Greco, who spent over 10 years in the NFL, was a senior for Boardman. But right across the line from him was freshman Levi George.
Okay.
So that shows you he was so good for so long. And I've talked about family. I absolutely love Levi's family. Shout out to the entire George family. You know who you are. I got to see his brother at a basketball game, his youngest brother at a basketball game a few months ago. And like I said, Levi George, great family. Started, played at football at Toledo, and I really believe he was only like 6'1". He's a pancake machine. You'll see in the highlights. If he was a couple inches taller, it would be like oh my God, he would. Might be another John Greco. And I don't want to sound crazy because as great as Greco was, but Levi was just, man, those guys on there. I mean, he was like, he had more pancakes than IHOP. I mean, it was crazy. You know, it was like, you know, Levi George. That's my boy. Shout out to the George family. Love him to death.
Absolutely. All right, Worm, we are down to number 13 on the top 30 in the past 30 years. Warren G. Harding Raider football players. Who does Worm have listed at the old number 13?
At number 13, we're going to go back into the household of the Daniels family. And this time it's going to be LaShawn Jr.'s father, LaShawn Daniels Sr., who, as I mentioned earlier, was a key component to the 1990 championship that we all talk about. We're all celebrating. 1992 graduate, so he was a junior when they won. Two-way lineman, very dominant on both sides of the line. You could talk so much about that 90 team. I know those are my guys. They're the OGs now, as we like to call them. You know, they like I said, just such a collective effort, and LaShawn's efforts not only resulted in the championship here, but he played at Ohio State alongside him and Corey Stringer. Both went to Ohio State, and LaShawn was on the 1997 Minnesota Vikings roster, big LaShawn, and he's just great. We're seeing the greatness of him beyond the field with the way that he's raised his kids. We talked about little LaShawn. We're going to hear about James Daniels, current Chicago Bear, later on. You know, greatness attracts greatness, and together as a team, they've raised these young men. They have a daughter that's going to Ohio State this fall. And I mean, you just see where this greatness comes from.
Oh, yeah.
You know, but the story with these Daniels, I mean, they're just great at whatever they do. And it might sound cliche, but it's all you got to do is just check the numbers and open your paper and, you know,
absolutely, grades, and
they're just amazing people. LaShawn Daniels Sr.
But since 1990 to be listed as in the top 30, I mean, it's really good. Really played with some great guys, some great teammates, and then just some of the younger kids. Well, I guess a lot of them are grown now. So it's just a tremendous feeling. So it's very proud to be listed in it.
Absolutely. What's it mean to be a Warren G. Harding Raider to you?
Oh, man, it means everything. Just coming from the town, blue-collar community. A lot of folks, working in factories or healthcare or that type of nature, and, nothing is given to you. So when you come from Warren, you want to make sure you're representing yourself well. You want to make sure you represent your family well and your hometown. There's nothing like being a Warren G. Harding Raider.
Worm, great list so far. We already have 18 knocked off the list. How about give us number 12? Who do you have at number 12?
At number 12, I have number 12. Number 12, Anthony Hope, Harding's all-time sack leader with 28 sacks. 18 and a half of those came during the state title run in 2002 when we, of course, Harding finished as the state runner-up. We both have very fond memories of that year. Anthony Hope, class of 2004. He's a couple years behind me, but I've known Anthony since Devon Elementary on the east side on Central Parkway. And it's so rewarding. I've touched on this earlier. It's so rewarding to see guys that you grew up with grow up and just become great guys. He attended the 2003 Division I Defensive Player of the Year. Probably should have won 2002, but 2003 Division I Defensive Player of the Year. Went to University of Cincinnati, where he had record-setting seasons down there with sacks, and he still resides in the Cincinnati area. He's doing very well, and I'm just so proud of the man that he's become. And Anthony Hope, I could talk for hours about Hope, like literally.
Right, absolutely. He was a treat to watch too.
Yeah, man, he was just so done. He played so much bigger than he actually was. Like he was like maybe they listed him as 6 foot, but I don't think he was 6'1", 6 foot. I don't think he was like 6 foot, but
right.
But like
he did play larger than
30 pounds, and he was just so. And people thought that he was undersized to Harding playing defensive end, so they thought that he was going to play defensive, that he would move the linebacker in college, but Hoke stayed a defensive end, and he just an amazing athlete, even better person, Anthony Hoke, class of 2004.
Worm, who do you have on this list at number 11?
Number 11, the Prescott Burgess. You know him very well as he graduated with you in 2003.
Prescott Burgess, absolutely without question, one of the hardest hitting linebackers, one of the most coveted recruits coming out of Warren Harding. I remember the Division I offers he had were all across the country, and obviously did big things at Michigan and made it to the NFL.
Obviously played in the NFL, one of those guys that played both ways, and certainly was a force on the Warren Harding defense and was a big force on that offense as well.
Prescott Burgess was another player that a lot of people will probably put on this list. Just a very physical player that took his talents to the National Football League.
And defensively, there's none who really outshone. Prescott Burgess was an Army All-American when he was here, went on to play at Michigan, and then also a few years in the NFL.
Great guy, great family. First team All-Ohio in 2001. He was actually a pretty heavy favorite. You know, Maurice Claret won Mr. Football, amongst other things, in 2001. So Prescott was actually an early preseason favorite for the 2002 Mr. Football Award, but again, injuries got in the way. That didn't stop him because he still was voted as a starter in the 2003 Army All-American game, which can be seen on YouTube. He had an interception that game, played football for the University of Michigan, enjoyed a 5-year NFL career, the majority of which was with the Baltimore Ravens. So we got to play alongside Ray Lewis. Actually got to see him play. They played the Browns. I don't want to get the year wrong, but I went to a Browns-Ravens game in the late 2000s. He didn't see me, but it didn't matter because, once again, I was just so proud of him. It's crazy I have an Army All-American at number 11. And, and I don't know how he's going to feel about that, but, Prescott knows that he's my boy. He knows that, he has nephews that play at Harding now, football and basketball Harding. Now shout out to Imari and my boy Nutty Burgess, Davion Burgess. But Prescott Burgess, I mean, what a player. He was absolutely. I think Rivals.com had him the number 1 safety in the country for the class of 2003. Despite his injuries, despite missing time, and despite him being on a loaded team, he always was the enforcer. You don't want to take a hit from Prescott Burgess.
And I just remember a couple of things. He was a great person. And when you look at these players that you're talking about, then you look at their college photos and you look at the professional photos, you see them develop look-wise as a stronger and bigger man. Prescott Burgess was that NFL athlete his senior year of high school. It's just the same picture almost that they're using. He was just a beast from the gets. And, as a big Browns fan myself, and, in our area in Youngstown, Ohio, there's a lot of Browns fans, there's a lot of Steelers fans. We both don't like each other, but we also have another thing in common. We don't like the Baltimore Ravens. And for those 5 years or however many years he played with the Baltimore Ravens, that was the closest thing to somewhat I could say I rooted for the Baltimore Ravens a little bit, but it was a treat to watch him. All right, Raider fans, with us now is the head coach of your Warren G. Harding Raiders, Coach Steve Arnold. I've reached out to a few of the players, and they said, it's an honor to wear the Warren G. Harding black and gold. And, what's some of the things that you tell your players why that's an honor?
Because there are a lot of guys who came before him, Brad.
Right.
Laid the groundwork. We had shirts made 2 years ago. And I'm trying to remember what it said on the back of the shirts. I'm big in kind of having a saying for the year. I think it said something, remember, it's okay to drink the water, but remember who dug the well.
Oh, you're right.
And I when I got those shirts, I explained to the team what that meant. Basically, there was guys that came before you, and you have to leave a legacy when you leave here because there's guys going to come after you. So obviously, it's a great honor to be a part of this historic program here, and it's not easy to do.
Right.
One of the things that these guys I just mentioned, and any other player, sometimes they say, Coach Arnold is too hard. I don't think that I'm too hard. I think what happens is I'm trying to prepare these guys for life.
Right.
Of all the guys that I've coached, you're talking about a select few that's played at the highest level.
Right.
So a lot of players, they don't realize that that ball is going to stop bouncing, or you're going to stop scoring touchdowns or whatever sooner rather than later. So you have to be prepared for the game of life, man.
Raider fans, we are down to the final 10 on the top 30 in the past 30 years Warren G. Harding Raider football players. David Worm Baugh, your final 10 here. Hit us with number 10.
This has got to be the craziest thing that I've ever done. It's just insane. I mean, my number 10 just spent a few years just spent 4 or 5 years at NFL. Dan Boom Herring.
Daniel Boom Herring, probably one of the best all-around people I've known.
Oh, absolutely.
Sports. Just a good person outside of the talent that he brought to the table. He was our first ever Big 22 Player of the Year as well.
Oh, okay.
Boom Herring, what he was able to do at Harding, then at Ohio State, and then in the National Football League. Boy, did he do a heck of a job there as a big bruising back.
Had a tremendous impact, several impactful years here at Harding, and went on to Ohio State, left his mark, and played several years in the NFL as well.
Harding's second all-time leading rusher with 3,774 yards. Third in Harding history with 42 rushing touchdowns. He had 18 100-yard games with over 100 yards. He had 4 games with over 200 yards. He's one of 4 Harding players in history to rush for over 300 yards in the game, which he did against Mooney as a junior in 2005. You can't say enough about his work ethic. He didn't take no for an answer. Had a solid NFL career. He's doing well for himself now. And not only to go to Ohio State, he became one of their all-time leading rushers. I believe he's a top 10 rusher in Ohio State history. And you look back at, you don't think that, guys like Eddie George and Archie Griffin and Keith Byers, and you hear all these names and you don't look too far down and you see that Boom is right up there with yards and touchdowns. And I believe he has the longest play. At one point, he had the longest play in Ohio history against Michigan.
The history that we have with all the players that have came before me, and even after me now, it means everything. Just to be able to put the black and gold on and represent our town of Warren, Ohio, and represent all the players, like I said, came before me and after me, man, it means a lot to me.
All right, Worm, number 9. Who do you have at number 9?
Number 9 is shocking to me because he could very well be number 1. Because I remember when I got my copy of, a friend of mine gave me a copy of the 1990 highlight film. He was like, hope you enjoy the Tico show. And I was like, Tico? I'm like, who's? I'm like, Tico, And we just heard about his son a few spots back, but Thomas Tico Powell. He spent his senior year at Harding after playing at reserve. Shout out to his brother Hank Powell, because once again, Hank was one of the guys that helped mold Tico into what he became. And 1990 season, he actually led Harding in touchdown catches with 10. 32 catches for 684 yards and 10 touchdowns in the 1990 season. He is the only player in Harding history with 10 touchdown catches and 10 interceptions on defense. And he did it in the same season. But, you see a lot of him through his son Jalen with his versatility. I mean, Tico was all over the field. I mean, I think one game he had like 3 or 4 interceptions against Arkansas Fitch in the playoffs. I mean, he was just an amazing athlete. And you see that with, like I said, with Jalen coming up and the effect that he's had on the community, on his teammates. Because you can't talk about none of those 90. You talk about any of those 90 guys, they're all going to jump on you. So, you guys all got nothing but love for you. So shout out to you guys, every last one of y'all. Because every time you hear one of these names, it's a collective effort. And they put Tico in the position to just shine and flourish at the highest level of high school football, because we won a championship because of his efforts. So Thomas Tico Powell.
And you talk about the 1990 team, and obviously we were a lot younger back then. But one of the things about the 2003 Raider class that I graduated from, we were also the first Warren G. Harding Raider kindergarten class. I remember my kindergarten class, my buddy took me to a game. So I was there. I guess I did see all these players, like you said, but it's what a treat that looking back on the 1990 team. And they do mean a lot to us because I can't stress this enough. That wasn't just another championship. I know Warren has 7 altogether when you count AP and state championships, but they were, it's magical that it happened after that merger. There's a lot of confusion when two states come together as one, or two sides of a city come together as one. And arguably, we're one of the greatest rivals in the state of Ohio, if not the nation, comes together and they say, this is Warren football then. This is what you're going to give me. We're going to go down your throat. We're going to create what it means to wear this black and gold, Warren G. Harding black and gold, what it means to, represent the Raider name. And they started it right off at the championship. And what a wonderful class with that. 1990, absolutely. All right, Worms. So we're at number 8 in the countdown of the top 30 in the past 30 years. Who is the number 8? Who do you have for number 8?
Number 8, he's the definition of a hardcore player. He's the definition of a man. I keep saying it. I keep saying this over. I'm so proud of him. Sidney Glover, class of 2007. Sid is just an example how he sets the tone, and not just with football. Like, he sets the tone in his life, the way that he raises his kids, the way that he goes about his business. And once again, everything is all tied to football because that's the way he was on the field. Just so dynamic. Played at West Virginia, spent time on the Buffalo Bills upon his graduation, got his degree real quick. I got on a personal level, I found his jersey, his NFL jersey on eBay, and it's like, nobody's allowed to touch it. Like, just let it sit there until, because it means so much to me because, like I said, you see these guys at a younger age. I didn't know Sid when he was young. I always heard about him, but as a sophomore and as a junior, and I see him coming around and I see him on the field and how he conducts himself and the stuff that he's been through, the road that he's traveled. I have so much respect for him, and he's a no-nonsense type of guy. So even as I'm showing him love right now, if you don't agree with something, Sid's gonna let you know, and that's just a part of who he is. So Sidney Glover, class of 2007, number 8.
All right, Worm, we are down to the final 7. Who do you have for number 7?
Number 7, just like Anthony Hope, go back to my Devon Elementary School days. He's a little bit older than me. I hope 2 years younger than me. This time, 3 years older than me. Carl Diggs, class of 1999.
Carl was such a standout player. When I was covering, back early in my career, just a brute on both sides of the ball, linebacker, fullback, one of those guys that could, run past you or run right through you. So, like
I said about Derek Tolles and Homer Simpson earlier, he played with them in the 1999 Big 33 game. And here's an interesting point about Carl. His stats are impressive. As a sophomore, he ran for, 201 yards and 6 touchdowns on 34 carries, just to get, his feet wet and stuff. He played a little bit defensively. The key component about him, and I touched on this with the injuries of the 99 class, he missed his entire junior year with a torn ACL. But the kicker is, before his senior season, which was the 1998 season that I keep talking about, before his senior season, he was already committed to Michigan. So that shows you just how highly Michigan thought of him, and he eventually became their team captain in the 2003 season. That shows you just how highly they thought of him. And then go back to Derek Tolles. He gets hurt his senior year. We never got to see Derek Tolles and Carl Diggs healthy for a whole season. And they graduate together, which is mind-boggling. But Carl, he played fullback, played tailback, played linebacker. He rushed 176 times for 1,280 yards and 16 touchdowns as a senior, and he won Division I Defensive Player of the Year. Who does that? You know what I mean? I think we forget just how versatile he is. You know, shout out to the Diggs. You know, everybody in Warren knows each other. That's why I'm shouting everybody out. Shout out to the Diggs family. Played in Michigan, spent time on the Bears roster in 2014, the Chicago Bears roster in 2004, excuse me. And I mean, he's spent time on Harding's coaching staff. He's doing very well for himself. And again, as we get older, that I can't stress that enough. That becomes so important when you see these guys have lives beyond the football field. And Carl is just as relevant now as he was back then, and I'm so happy, I'm so proud of him. You know, he's like become one of the OGs now, like we talked about.
Right,
so,
right.
All days, that's of 1999.
Almost to the final five, Worm. But before we get to number 5, we have to get to number 6. Who is number 6 on your list?
Number 6. Sound like a broken record. Got to go back to the Daniels family, and we still get to enjoy this young man playing. Class of 2015 graduate, James Daniels.
You know, people might not think about linemen, but I can tell you from, you know, just experience talking with Coach Arnold, you know, he'll tell you firsthand, this kid was an NFL talent, and he knew it as a sophomore.
James is one of those guys that, you know, really developed. I don't think was recruited very much, and was one of those silent leaders, and really did a tremendous job for Warren Harding. I remember his signing day was very quiet that day, and when he went to Iowa, you know, certainly proved his capabilities there, and is doing it in the NFL.
Opened up so many of those holes for so many of the great skill position guys. He's with the Bears now, and anytime you needed an extra hard-earned yard, James Daniels was there.
Think about Big Ten players, James Daniels. Offensive lineman, a kid again. He was the epitome of a student athlete here. Then also at Iowa, didn't only play football there for a few years, but also completed his degree, graduated. Now he's with the Chicago Bears.
3-year starter at Harding. His offer list was ridiculous. In alphabetical order, I have him offers from Akron, Alabama, Auburn, Bowling Green, Cincinnati, Illinois, Iowa, Kentucky, Miami, Michigan State, Northwestern. That's Miami, Florida that I mentioned. I just might be wrong. Northwestern, Ohio State, Penn State, UCLA, West Virginia. And all of this, again, I talked about Big LaShawn and his wife Alicia earlier. All of this was made possible by a strong foundation at home, because he had his grades together and his stuff together off the field, which allowed his film to speak for himself. And, you know, for, you know, our boy Coach Arnold, Steve Arnold, to push this guy and tell these colleges, I have this guy that's going to get it done for you in the classroom. It's going to get it done for you on the field. That's battle tested, that's been through the fire, you know. And it's funny, you know, he going back to his college choice, all the college choices he had, he elected to go with his brother, LaShawn Jr., who was already at Iowa. And so he had a successful 3-year career at Iowa, where I believe he graduated early, came out in 3 years, and got drafted in the second round of the 2018 NFL draft for the Chicago Bears, where he's now starting on the offensive line. He gets to play with Mitch Trubisky from Menor, who he played against in the 2012 playoffs. So, you know, that was kind of like a reunion there. But I mean, James Daniels is he's like a gentle giant. He's just such a great young man.
LaShawn Jr. and James being listed in this top 30 as well. Can you let us know a little, you know, can you let us in on the Daniels family secret to success?
Well, I think it's, you know, just from a young age, really getting them involved in some sports, you know, and just let them know nothing's going to be given to you. So it's all based on what you do and the opportunities that's presented to you, and just making the right choices. So there's probably been a lot of players that came from Warren that might have been more talented than me, more talented than my son. So I think the things that separate us is just really going and just, you know, this is what I want and this is what I need to do. So there's nothing like the work. So that's all I tell them. It's always about the work and making sure you're doing things right.
Raider fans, we hope you've enjoyed this show so far. We are now at the final 5 players on the top 30 in the past 30 years, Warren G. Harding Raider football players. Worm, it's the countdown. It's the final part of this countdown. What is your number 5?
Number 5 could be number 1. I almost feel guilty putting him this low. He's like family to me now. So proud of what he's done. You know, we've all celebrated him over the years. Mario Manningham, class of 2005.
And probably one of the most unforgettable moments I've ever covered was on the sidelines at Mollenkopf. And oh my gosh, I can't remember the year, but it was against Glenville. And, you know, down 2 points with 1 minute left. All Glenville had to do was just run out the clock, and they threw it. He picked it off, ran it back for a touchdown.
Oh, okay. Yep.
I think it was 2004, I believe. But, I mean, just absolutely unbelievable play from one of the best I've ever seen. So,
and Mario, again, a very quiet guy, a guy who won a Super Bowl and was a great wide receiver. Didn't have great height, but just found that seam. When you needed a big play, Mario was that type of guy. And
Mario Manningham single-handedly took over games on the turf and on the field at Mollenkopf Stadium back when there wasn't turf. And Mario certainly was another one of those guys. It was a home run hitter, and he could take it to the house.
Okay. And we talk about big plays and big games from, I want to say, his first game. I don't remember watching it Michigan. I think maybe it was against Notre Dame or Penn State. Big catches, just making big timely catches throughout college. And probably none bigger than that catch in the Super Bowl.
Harding's all-time leader in catches with 102. Most receiving yards in the game, 257 against a loaded Cleveland Glenville team in 2004. Most receiving yards in the season, 821 in that 2004 season, and 1,895 yards for his career. Great career at Michigan, 7-year NFL career, mostly with the New York Giants. 210 catches for 2,849 yards and 19 touchdowns in his NFL career. But of course, Mario will be known far beyond his years on this earth. So his name will live on forever because of his huge 38-yard catch on third down late in the fourth quarter in Super Bowl 46, which allowed quarterback Eli Manning to continue to drive and lead the Giants to a 21-17 victory over the New England Patriots. Mario actually was set to play in the Super Bowl the following year with the San Francisco 49ers, but he missed that game for being hurt, which could have, impacted the outcome of the game because the Baltimore Ravens ended up beating the 49ers. But at the same time, we don't play the what-if game in one Ohio. We make things happen. We put ourselves we watch these young men put themselves in a position to be relevant, to make big plays, and we don't worry about what we could have done. We worried about what's being done and we push these guys to do even more beyond the football field. And Mario, he sells several camps in Warren. He's very active with the youth, setting good examples for them. And Mario Manningham, class of 2005.
Absolutely. And, he was so fun to watch. A lot of my videos actually began on great days that he's done. The first time I ever recorded a football game back in high school and put together my first ever music video for Harding Sports was the game that he was unleashed versus Massillon.
Absolutely.
Back in 2002. And then going into his Super Bowl year with the Giants, I hadn't put together a video probably in 4 or 5 years. This was 9 years ago. And I'm like, I want to do a quick video real quick. I had this idea, and that viral ended up going a little bit viral around. I heard he got to watch that before he went out in the field that night. Just a phenomenal player. Just he would probably, I'd have to say, 42,000 people all at once when that catch happened. I don't know if there was a person in Warren that was sitting down once that catch happened. We were all on our feet on our part. And speaking of which, Worm, I'd like to introduce a guest I recently sat down with, who I may or may not have asked the question. Your son was the offensive coordinator for this team, but one of your highlighted players made the catch that ultimately made your son lose that Super Bowl. So with us right now is Tom McDaniels. Let's go ahead and roll that. I have a question for you, though, and I always wanted to ask you this one. Okay, you're sitting there. It's a Super Bowl. Your son, Patriots, are sitting there, And all of a sudden, it looks like the Patriots are going to win, but a guy that you coached makes that marvelous catch on the sidelines. What are you feeling there? What was that moment like?
Well, I went into the game. One, I wanted Mario to play great.
Right.
And the Patriots to win.
Right.
So I got about half of what I wanted because he made, one of the biggest catches in the history of the Super Bowl. Set up, the score that ended up winning for the Giants. And he took a great hit. It was a fade versus cover 2, and the safety overlapped and knocked him out of bounds at the moment of the catch. But it was a huge catch. I was very happy for him, but I was disappointed the Patriots didn't win.
Oh, absolutely. Well, Coach, I appreciate you being on this program. It was great to sit down with Tom McDaniels, and what a blessing it was for him to bring up so many great players. But back to the countdown, Worm. Who do you have for number 4?
Any one of these guys in my top 5 can be number 1. And this guy is definitely number 1 in the eyes of many. I've known him. He's about 10, 11 years older than me, but I've known him since I was a little boy. I used to look up to him, and I'll have a quick story about that in a second. But Omar Provit, 1992 class.
Omar Provit. He was a guy that, I didn't cover on TV. I was just in high school when he was in high school, and watching him play, he was the most outstanding player I'd ever seen. At number 28, just screaming up and down the sidelines, as elusive and fast as anybody I've ever seen, just an automatic touchdown waiting to happen.
Omar was one of those guys that I remember. He was a great wide receiver, but I think he was a better return guy than anything on punt returns and I believe kickoff returns as well. And
I know somebody who fans around here will definitely remember and know him as a winner. That would be Omar Provit.
Oh, yeah.
Big plays here at Mollenkoff Stadium and also throughout the state, and helped deliver our last state championship.
As I mentioned earlier with Chris Enzyme, he caught an 84-yard touchdown pass against Cincinnati Princeton at the Rubber Bowl in the 1990 state championship game, which is still a Division I state championship game record all these years later. I mean, he was just the epitome of greatness. I mean, he was just so smooth. 1990, he caught 33 catches for 700 yards, 7 touchdowns, had 2 punt return touchdowns, and 1 kickoff return for a touchdown. Since 1990, he was a junior in 1990, so he played in 89. But to touch on what he's done since 1990, he scored 7 non-offensive touchdowns between his junior and senior year. 4 via punt return, 2 kickoff returns, and 1 interception return against Niles in the senior year of 1991. But Omar Such, state championship game, 5 catches for 187 yards and 2 touchdowns. And he set, the majority of that was in the first half, he set the tone so early on such a loaded team. And it's funny that he was that good in football because, like I said, I've known him since I was little. My mother and Valley Counseling Services used to run programs over a building over here on Burton Street called the Delaney Center. And Omar, I had to be like 5, 6 years old. And Omar was like that teenager that the kids looked up to. I didn't even know how good he was in football, and funny story, I don't know if Omar remembers this, but I had this little dance I used to do, and I'm not going to do it, but a little goofy dance I used to do. And whenever Omar wanted me to do it, do the claw, do the claw, do the claw. He called it the claw, and I would do it, and it would just make him laugh, and he just lit up. And like I said, I didn't even care how good he was in football. We just, as kids, we looked up to him because he was so nice to us. He would play with us and school us and just, and little did I know that he was doing his own version of the claw out there, snatching passes and scoring touchdowns and running all over the place. So still cool with him to this day. Like I said, love the Provit family. He has a nephew, like I said earlier, Tyreek Ivory, who is a sophomore. He's already begun to make an impact and make his footprint on the Harding football program. So hopefully that continues. But I mean, Omar's legacy on one will never be forgotten. Omar Provit.
Worm, what a great list you got going on so far. And we're down to the final 3. But before we get into this final 3, it was important for us to dedicate this show to the senior class of 2020 athletes that are in the spring sports. And the reason why is, today the OHSAA, because of COVID, they decided that the spring season is unfortunately not going to happen. And it was important for us that even though these seniors, they may have lost their final game, they will never not be remembered. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce some of our coaches that we sat down with so they can introduce these seniors and speak a little bit about each team. Let's go ahead and roll that footage. We have a special guest, Athletic Director Bill Nicholson, to talk about the impact of the spring sports cancellation and any plans for the fall sports. So without further ado, welcome Bill Nicholson. Bill, with the heartbreaking news with the cancellation of spring sports, what can you say, or what do you want to say about the impact that that's had on the athletic department at Harding?
Well, obviously, it's tough. I mean, we've been, these young men and women that are seniors that are going to miss out on their last year, which, we're expecting some really great things from them. They've been getting ready for this all their lives. It's kind of been, taken away. But with what's going on in the world, Brandon, I mean, I don't think there was any other alternative than to cancel.
Where can the community find out, up-to-date information with, Warren G. Harding Sports?
Well, we have a website, WGH Athletics, that posts a lot of stuff. It's kind of slowed down recently, but we've had some postings. And we also have a Twitter account at WGH Athletics. So we go through Twitter. We go through the WGH Athletics website.
Well, Bill, I really do appreciate you being on here and starting to show off. And I think it's going to be a fun community show. And we're really going to make sure that we hit on these seniors that, that like I told these coaches, they may have lost their final year, but they're going to be remembered. And this is just a personal thing that we're doing on this show, but I'm sure you guys have plans with them. And once you're a Raider, you're always a Raider, right?
That's correct. And you know what? I just sent an email out the other day that what we're going to do on our Twitter site and our website is going to get some student pictures, information, some bio questions, some fun facts about them, post them and to celebrate them.
All right, Raider fans, with us now is the head coach of the Warren G. Harding Raiders softball team, Megan Coe. And you know what? Let's go ahead and do the lineup of your class on softball, and then we'll talk a little bit about it. So what is the class of 2020 Warren G. Harding softball Raiders?
We have Taylor Boffman as our pitcher, Carly Heelman as our catcher. We have Michelle Stanton as our shortstop, and we have Kalina Trimble as our first baseman.
Absolutely. And you know what? The floor is yours. What does that senior class mean to you? What would you like to say about that?
Well, this is a good senior class. They really wanted to prove what they had, and we really talked about it. And, Michelle and Carly and Taylor and Kalina really stepped up this year and wanted to have a really good senior season and show what they were going to leave for other classes to see and to build on. Right. So it's sad not to be able to see them go out there and play. I just talked to them a little bit today, and I think what's going to happen is our underclassmen are going to see you just can't take anything for granted.
Right.
Because you never know when it's going to be over. It could be a pandemic. It could be an injury. It could be whatever. You just never know when it's going to be over. So I think it's going to push even our underclassmen to want to do better and condition better and take every pitch, take every play, and just give their fullest every time they're out there.
All right. At this time, guys, welcome to the show, head coach of the Warren G. Harding baseball Raider team, Andrew Burnett. First, Andrew, how about we hear, why don't you give us the lineup, your class of 2020 varsity baseball players?
All right, so we had 7 seniors this year. Cameron Nupp, Caven Stouffer, Brandon Arnold, Dakota Simon, Robert Jacobek, Jordan Adkins, and Noah Murray. Those are our 7 seniors we were going to have this year.
Absolutely. And, it's got to be so heartbreaking for you to not have this final season with them. So, the floor is yours. Why don't you talk about, your senior class of baseball players?
All right, I appreciate that. Thank you. These kids, this is a group of kids that as a coach, you kind of wait your career to have. A lot of them played since they were freshmen. They worked their way through. We took our lumps when they were young. But these last couple of years, they've kind of shown what they can do, and we were looking forward this year to proving a lot of things to ourselves and everyone else. This group is it's a dedicated group. I mean, we've been in the weight room since Thanksgiving. We've had 20 kids showing up 2-3 times a week, just lifting and running and getting in shape. And that comes from this group of senior leaders. They were there, they were pushing the kids. You know, they were working hard. They were showing everyone what we expect and what to do. As a coach, when you have a group of kids like that really buys in and just, you know, can show the freshmen and the sophomores what you expect and what it should look like, that's just an asset that you can't teach. I mean, this group of kids, and I know this is kind of cliche, everyone says it's a family, but this kind of felt like a family. I mean, these kids, they loved each other. They were getting each other up. If someone was having a bad day, they were talking. It was, like I said, it was the group of kids that as a coach, you can't ask for anything more. I mean, there was rarely a time when at a conditioning or a practice where I actually had to say anything. One of these guys would step up and say, "Hey guys, we got to do this, or we got to pick it up." So it's just it was an energetic, it was a fun group. I mean, we were always joking around, we were having a good time, but they were hungry. They wanted to show everyone this year what they could do. So we were looking forward to it. It's a shame, you know, how everything went down, and I know it's a necessary thing, but it's hard to tell 17, 18-year-old kids, you know, what happened and what you can do. There's really nothing as a coach you can say.
Right.
So it's kind of a difficult time for everyone. And I know it's everyone,
right.
But it hits a little bit to where, you know, you can't just grab that kid and be like, hey, it's going to be all right.
Raider fans, we're thrilled to have with us today the WGH Raider boys tennis coach, Craig Charnett. Well, I appreciate you being on this show, and more importantly, you know, with the OHSAA's news of the spring sports season being canceled, we wanted to honor the spring sports senior class of 2020. So if you wouldn't mind, speak about please, announce your seniors that you have and speak about them as a whole.
Okay, yeah, we have three seniors that are coming back for four-year lettermen. They've been with us the whole time. That would be Giovannone Orr, Peyton Mann, and Nathan Schaefer. And then also last year we had brought on Raymond Aponcha, who is he would have been playing varsity this year. All of them are playing doubles. That'd be our number 1 and number 2 doubles team. It's kind of a bummer for them. I'm sure losing their whole season like this, and because we were looking forward to getting out there and playing some good tennis. Well, they're all great kids. The three had been with me there for, you know, this would have been the 4th year. Always excited, always good to partake in wherever I put them as far as singles, doubles, that kind of thing. And just always had a positive attitude about things. But I'm sure they'll all be very successful.
Oh, absolutely. All right, Raider fans, I'm thrilled to have with us our Warren G. Harding Raider track coach, Charles Penny. I'm glad that you're part of this show, and we can really give a moment for the track stars to have a moment to, you know, their season might be lost, but they're always going to be remembered. So without further ado, who is your senior class of 2020 seniors?
On our girl side, we have 2 seniors, Tatiana Bennett and Kiera Fletcher. And on the boys side, we actually have quite a few seniors. Raymond Impua, Jamel Anderson, Jordan Brantley, Xavier Broadus, Marcus Brown, Colin Falk, Michael Keller, Brandon Leaku, Reed Standard, Marcus Wilkins, and Jazir Graham.
As a whole, how much do you miss them, and what do you hope for them in the future?
Well, you know, missing them it doesn't do justice. I mean, since you know, some of these young people have been with me, like for example, Colin Reed. So they run cross country and play soccer. They run indoor track and outdoor track. So those 2 boys, and we'll put Tatiana in there. She runs cross country with me. Those 3 individual seniors are with me from the first Tuesday in July, after the 4th of July, all the way through the first Saturday in June.
Wow.
So they've been with me literally almost 11 months for 4 straight years.
Wow.
You know, so these kids aren't kids to me. They're family. You know, all these young people are family to me. And I've been, since the day that we were told this pandemic happened and we had to cut back, and everybody didn't know what was going to happen. You know, I'm on the Remind app every day, talking to these kids, you know, giving them practice workouts, making sure they're okay mentally and physically.
Right.
You know, checking up on, making sure they're okay, what do they need. There's a lot of things that people don't understand what's going on with the minds of 16, 17, and 18-year-olds. I mean, these are young people that have no idea what the world's about.
Right,
and they're
right.
going to be thrust into the situation, and it's new for everybody.
Yeah.
So I mean, I just there's been many nights where I shed a tear, and it's very hard to deal with them now. Not deal with them, but deal with this whole situation.
Right.
They're all going to be successful in life. I mean, first of all, if they can deal with me for 4 years, I mean, come on. I mean, I know what's out there. I'm a tough son of a gun to deal with. So if these young people can deal with me as a coach, life's going to be grand for them. And they're just smart, educated, well-respected. They will always represent Warren the right way.
Absolutely. Thanks again to the coaches that sat down with us to really honor that spring sports senior class of 2020. And congratulations to all the senior class of 2020 as well. So, Worm, here it is, the final three. Who do you have at number 3?
Yeah, touch on what you just said before I get into number 3, which is crazy. But shout out to those seniors. Watch you guys grow up. I'm so proud of y'all. It takes a village to raise a child. So, we're always here if you need us. You're not going through this alone. Obviously, you're taking the brunt of everything that's going on, but it takes a village. So you guys ever need us, you hit us up on Facebook, you call us. We'll always be there for you. Shout out to the class of 2020. Number 3 is, oh my God, this is so hard for me because in the eyes of many Harding fans, this guy is number 1, and he should be number 1 for me because I actually graduated with him. But Maurice Claret, and I'll explain my reasoning. For having him number 3, which you're the third, But Maurice Claret, USA Today Offensive Player of the Year in 2001 Mr. Football. And it's weird, he won all these awards and he actually split Trumbull County with Anthony Smith. Shout out to Anthony Smith from Hubbard.
Maurice Claret, without a doubt, was a guy that, I kind of cut my teeth at WKBN covering and, watched him rush for 400 yards against St. Ed's and then went and interviewed, Tom McDaniels the very next day. And I remember Coach McDaniels telling me, as good as he was in that game, he didn't grade out at 100%, so he's capable of better. And,
Right.
He was just a man playing with boys. So he's definitely, one of the top 3 guys I've ever covered.
All the time, who's the best football player you've seen in person? And, I think without a doubt, it's Maurice Claret. I mean, Maurice Claret was one of those guys that certainly he didn't run away from people. He ran through people. And he would want people to come up to him and, attempt to tackle him. The playoff game, he had over 300 yards in the first half against St. Ed's. Maurice Claret is just one of those guys that in my lifetime is probably the best football player that I've seen in person.
Maurice Claret, what can you say? It all goes with the name, and he certainly he lived up to all the billing when he went from Harding to Ohio State, and he's doing some great things now, but he's truly one of the best to ever play at Harding.
It doesn't get any bigger than winning the national championship for the Ohio State Buckeyes. And, I don't think they get to that point without Maurice, and they don't win that game without Maurice. So for what he did here, USA Today Player of the Year here at high school, again, delivering that national championship to Columbus, putting the Buckeyes back on the map. I'll tell you, that kind of kicked off the resurgence for the Buckeyes.
But Maurice Claret, senior year, 225 carries, 2,249 yards, and 30 touchdowns. 23 carries, 349 yards, and 4 touchdowns. 11 punt returns for 23 yards and 4 touchdowns. This is in the same year that he did this. 21 games with over 100 rushing yards, 7 games with 200 rushing yards. Has the only 400-yard game in history that he did in the second round of 2001 playoffs against Lakewood St. Edward. That was undefeated, and Reese just explodes for like 316 yards in the first half. And I mean, at his peak, he was just so dynamic, and we can't even begin to talk about what he did at Ohio State in his year there, helping lead them to a national championship. And, not just what he did on the ground, but, when Craig Kegel throws that interception to the late, great Sean Taylor, then he runs Taylor down and just snatches the ball from him, which saved the possession. I mean, it's just crazy what he accomplished. 53 total touchdowns at Harding. He went through a lot in his life after football, but thankfully he's a public speaker now. He's doing so much in his community, not just his community. He's a staple in Youngstown. He goes back and forth to Columbus with people that were thought to be his enemies, you know, because of the stuff that was going on. You know, he's cleaned up his life. He's showing kids he's showing kids the way to go. And Maurice Clarett, I mean, shout out to the class of 2002, you know, but I can't say enough about him. And I'm like many of these guys, I'm so proud of what he's done with his life. And I thank him for the memories that he's provided us, and I thank him in advance for the mentoring and the memories that he's providing for today's people, for our people today. So Maurice Clarett.
And Worm, those were great words. And at the same time, I have my daughter that came in here. Say hi, Gianna.
Hi.
My daughter just came in here. So let me get to her real quick. That was a great pick with Maurice Clarett at number 2. And I'm sorry, that was a great pick at number 3. And let me take care of my daughter real quick. I'm glad she snuck in here, and I will give you, we'll continue this countdown. Worm, absolute fantastic pick at number 3. What memories did Maurice Clarett give all of us in the state of Ohio? But that leaves 2 more on the top 30 in the past 30 years, Warren G. Harding Raider football players. So Worm, who do you have for number 2?
This it's such a difficult decision, but my number 2, I don't even like calling number 2 because he's number 1 in the hearts of many of us. Is the late great Corey Stringer.
So, and when you talk about linemen, I mean, there's not going to be much better at Warren Harding than Corey Stringer. So
absolutely,
he's a guy that you know, I never covered in high school because he was a little bit older than me, but my experiences with him were much like Boom Herron, just one of the most likable people you'd ever be around, and everything you want in a lineman, size, power. And
I mean, I think when you think of Warren Harding, you think of, the offensive line, you think of Corey Stringer. And Corey was one of those guys that obviously was the heart and soul of the offensive and defensive line, and certainly a guy that we truly miss.
So what an outstanding career he had at Harding, of course, at Ohio State, then, of course, in the NFL. And anytime you see NFL players talking about Corey Stringer, you see that admiration, you see that respect that all those guys had for what a tremendous person and a tremendous player he was.
He just checks all the boxes here. Student athlete, great character guy, just a great friend, off the field contributions and everything, none other than Corey Stringer. Tremendous impact here. Was an All-American at Ohio State, Big Ten Offensive Lineman of the Year, I want to say, for a couple years. He's a Pro Bowl player in the NFL.
Who tragically passed away on August 1st, 2001. I think many forget just how dominant he was as a defensive lineman. Like, he's probably the best defensive tackle that Harding's ever had. But of course, we know him as big number 77 on the offensive side. You know, that's what the world knows, you know, and he wasn't, you know, Clarett had All-American honors, but so did Corey. He was a 1991 USA Today All-American. Many of us remember Amani Toomer from the New York Giants from the early 2000s. He was on that All-American team in 91, along with Corey Stringer. 3 years later, he was an All-American at Ohio State, 1994, and the following draft, he was drafted with the 21st pick of the 1995 draft by the Minnesota Vikings, of course. Doing great. Started 91 or 93 NFL games. He made the Pro Bowl. Some know, but some don't. He came home every bye week, just about every bye week. I knew him pretty well because I'm very close with some of his family members, and it's funny because I was around that time, I was 16, 17, and I was getting my driver's license and stuff, and he would come home and, you know, his birthday was in May, and so was my people's, and he would give me the car keys. He was like, "Hey, David, go to the store and get a cake and get this and get that," and and he would always rent these trucks. And I remember he had a white Mercury Mountaineer, and I'm just driving around the North End with this truck, and I was just thinking like, "Oh, I got Corey Stringer's car," And he was such a like I said, a gentle giant. I actually got to go to a Vikings game. I believe it was my birthday's October 7th. On October 1st of 2000, his last season, I went to a Vikings Lions game up in Detroit. He got me tickets for my birthday, and I got to go with his peoples. And I mean, it was just amazing. I know this is about high school, but a lot of times some of these guys get an opportunity to solidify themselves in the upper level. And as a lineman, you got to be the toughest of the toughest. He's one of, I believe, 6 players to have their number retired by the Vikings. The Vikings retired his number on November 19th, 2001. He joins Fran Tarkenton, Mick Tingelhoff, Jim Marshall, Chris Carter, and Alan Page as the only Vikings to have their numbers retired. I'm pretty sure Randy Moss will join that elusive company one day. Previously, 2 months before, the week of 9/11, which was September 14, 2001, at halftime of Harding's game against Ursuline, you may remember Harding had retired his number, and his family came down, and it was a nice ceremony. And he's number 1 in our hearts. Corey Stringer, he did so much for the city, and Corey Stringer number 2.
Oh, absolutely. And if there was ever just the poster player of a player that doesn't matter where you go once you become in the NFL, you don't forget about your hometown. It has to be number 77, and I think that's extremely why he's so special. Why don't you take this opportunity before we head into number 1? Why don't you speak about some of the honorable mentions on this list?
I'd be remiss if I didn't mention another classmate of mine, David Herron. He was a fullback for Claret. He was a big part of what we did in the early 2000s. Eventually went to Michigan State, played linebacker. Spent a few years in the league, mainly with the Minnesota Vikings, and he's the older brother of Boom Herron. And I alluded to him earlier because he helped their family laid a foundation for those boys to grow up and to be the men that they've become. Chris Zavino's another guy that he got signed as an undrafted free agent, and unfortunately he couldn't completely fulfill his NFL dreams due to he was a 4-year starter at Kent State, and he had some problems with his knee, but he rarely missed games. Our kickers, Joe Spain, Noah Murray from this year. He graduates this year. He just signed with Mount Union, so that's big. Mike Claus last year made a couple years ago made some big field goals for us. John Flaminio, it's crazy. We were too deep at kicker in the 2000s. Like John Flaminio would do the kickoffs and Joe Spain would get the field goals. Like, I don't know if that's been done before, especially in a public school. But I mean, there's so many. Costa Karapetis, he graduated in 1998. I believe he's Harding's first kicker to go Division I because he played at Wise. He ended up becoming the punter. But I mean, there's just so many guys. I don't want to mention too many guys. I want to leave some people out. But again, if you played this game, if you laced them up, if you spent time in 2 days, if you spent your blood, sweat, and tears on the football field, then I have my respect for you.
All right, Worm. Great lineup so far. I hope everyone out there, Raider fans, I hope you enjoyed this show. One more time, I want to mention just this show is dedicated to the spring sports senior class of 2020. Good luck to all of you and the entire Raider senior class of 2020, and honestly across the nation, the class of 2020. We are all here for you. Like Worm said previously, if you go to Warren, you're part of the family. You're once a Raider, always a Raider. Anybody is a message away. Anybody's a phone call away. All right, Worm, who is number 1 on the top 30 in the past 30 Warren G. Harding Raider football players?
everybody's going to have a different opinion about this, and I can't speak for anybody, but, numbers don't lie. My eyes don't lie. This young man passed the eye test. He's silenced any doubters that he's had at every level, and he's going to advance. By the time this airs, he's going to advance to the highest level. He'll be on the NFL roster, but this is 2017 graduate Lynn Bowden.
Lynn Bowden is one of the best I've ever covered, if not the best. Absolutely the most, dynamic player I've seen with a football, with these two eyes at least, and one of the best overall leaders.
Absolutely.
He was a four-time member of our Big 22, two-time, player of the year for us, over 4,000 yards rushing, just without question, probably the best player that I've seen, and I've been doing it for 25 years.
Lynn was one of those guys that every time he touched the ball, literally he could score. I remember a playoff game, every time he touched the ball, whether it was on a return, whether it was, as a receiver or at the quarterback spot, he could score.
The player that really impressed me the most in my time, and it's a guy that's going to be hearing his name in the NFL draft here coming up, Lynn Bowden. Just a human highlight film. A play was never done when Lynn was on the field until he said it was done, and it usually happened when he was in the end zone. So,
the Harding's record book is literally his autobiography. I mean, he owns the record for most rushing yards in the season, 2,277, 4,178 for his career as tops, and he averaged 10.7 yards per carry on 390 carries. So 390 is not a whole lot for a guy that's your all-time leading rusher, but he was just magic with the ball. And as much as people wanted to just limit him to just being a runner, he started Harding history with 2,232 passing yards. He's first in Harding history with 28 touchdown passes. I mean, he set such a high standard. He played in 25 games at Harding. 21, he rushed for over 100 yards. 9, he rushed for over 200 yards. Against Charlotte in the 2016 playoffs, he set the record for 497 total yards in the game. In 2016, he had 3,643 yards, and for his career, he had 6,279 yards with all our tops. There's been 6 games in Harding history where one player scored 6 or more touchdowns. Lynn has 4 of them.
Wow.
He has 12 touchdown passes of over 30 yards. He has 12 touchdown runs for over 50 yards. And when you include what he did his 2 previous years at Liberty, he's 6th in Ohio history in rushing yards with 7,387, tied for 10th in OHSAA history with 91 touchdown runs, and 1st in OHSAA history with 133 total touchdowns scored. At the college level, they don't expect every mobile quarterback to turn into Michael Vick. So of course at the University of Kentucky, they turned him into this athlete, which he is, and he did well. But early this season, when his team was down on their quarterback at the depth chart, he stepped back up. He turned into he won the Paul Hornung Award for the most versatile player in college football. He was a first-team All-American, and this is without any reps at the quarterback position in the offseason. I wouldn't trade my front row seat for anybody. I'm watching some of the greatest athletes in America, I feel like, and I watched these guys play against the best of the best, and guys that they played against are at Michigan State and Ohio State and all these Big Ten schools. And, Lynn Bowden, I mean, the numbers don't lie. This video was going to serve as a celebration to honor those guys, and as we look forward to Lynn stepping up in the NFL, and James Daniels is continuing his journey. I mean, it's just an exciting time to be a regular football fan. I mean, I'm just so proud of all these young men, and people always say, Worm, you're this, you're that, but I'm the lucky. I get to sit back and talk about something like this. It's just amazing what these guys have done.
I tell people, why do I like high school football? I'm getting to see in Northeastern Ohio, you're getting to see these talented players. And, I just don't keep up with just the Raider ones. There are a lot of great football players out there that you get to see from the ground level up. And hopefully everything goes well. This virus can separate, and we can get back to the biggest thing that puts communities together, that puts the nation together, and that is football. Football is very special. So anyone out there, do what you can. Stay safe, to listen to what's going on. And the more we all do that, the better we have a chance at having that 2012, that 30th anniversary season of the Warren G. Harding Raiders. Worm, I appreciate you, everything that you do. You know, being Warren's #1 fan, keeping the stats, keeping the histories, and keeping people reminded of how great they were and how exciting moments were. And not only that, Worm, I appreciate everything that you do for the youth, because people know you at games, but people don't understand that that's just one aspect. You're just enjoying a game based off everything else that you do for the Warren community. So I appreciate it. We all do. We all love you. Well, that's going to wrap up the top 30 in the past 30 years Warren G. Harding Raider football players. I greatly appreciate Worm doing his top 30. All of our special guests on today's show, anyone that helped promote this show, between my company and Worm's company, putting together all the clips. And we hope that during this time at Stay at Home, we gave you some sort of entertainment to make your families and everyone remember the great moments and the great players at Warren G. Harding. For David Worm Baugh and myself, Brennan Giovannone, so long and enjoy yourself. Stay safe.